FaceTime Fighters with myself, Aaron and Marksman Morgan. We're back. Another esteemed guest on today. Cut to the chase. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, your name, your fighter status, and where you're from.
Richie Gray, now retired boxer turned grappler. If anyone's on my Instagram, would have seen that. I'm from Essex, which was often where I boxed between York Hall and the Brentwood Centre. York Hall, probably a fan favourite and a fight favourite, but Brentwood, up the road from where I live. If you want to sell a ticket, you want to fight up the road.
That's it, man. Brentwood Centre was a great venue. Great venue. Boxed it myself. Brilliant venue.
Yeah.
Yeah, Richie, I see you a judo instructor now. I saw that.
Yeah, well, I'm on my journey, if you like. So I've been doing jiu-jitsu now for about, I don't know how many years now, maybe 3, maybe reaching to 4 now, I can't remember. And at one of the clubs, I was a judo instructor, got talking, started doing judo, quite well at it, probably because of the grappling. Boxing's obviously helped when you go to any new combat sport. An old combat sport will certainly put you in good stead, you know, physically and mentally. And then the judo followed from the jiu-jitsu, and then I started helping my coach, and he was like, get your qualification, let's go. So I did part 2 of my judo coaching qualification on Sunday.
Wicked. Did you find with jiu-jitsu, did you find that after you finished boxing, you needed something to scratch that sort of combat itch? No sparring and things like that? Or did you just want to pick up a new hobby? I know I started doing jiu-jitsu myself, and I knew it was because I needed that, without sounding too fruity, I needed that man-on-man sort of bit of competitiveness.
Yeah, you know what? You know what it's like. If you're a competitive person and you like the grind, if you want to call it that, you like a scrap. I don't mean to sound caveman-y, but if you like a scrap, it's engaging. And I could be wrong here, but I'm going to go out on a whim and say a lot of fighters don't necessarily enjoy lifting weights. So their method of exercising is doing the combat sports or the boxing or whatever it is. Yeah. I tried to lift weights for a period after boxing. It bores the life out of me, man. I want to care. I want to like it, but I just don't. I went up from boxing at 75 to about near 100 kilos, attempting to lift weights, and I did get bigger and stronger, but I was mostly fat. But I weren't just happy doing it. And then, exactly as you put it, did a bit of judo. I actually wanted to do MMA, and then because I did Thai boxing, I did Thai boxing as well. I had about 10 fights in Thailand, and then I went to an MMA club, got ragdolled by some tiny humans, and then thought, damn, I need to learn to grapple.
Right, Rich. We're gonna crack on with the questions. We'll start with a bit of a deeper one. What's the biggest lesson that you learned through your boxing journey?
You know what? It's I took from boxing that I could do more than I believed I could do before I did pro boxing.
Wow.
So and it seems like I'm going off track here, but it is relevant. And I think before I was a pro boxer, I was working on the tools in construction for about 10 years, which was great. I loved it. It was cool. But I knew I could do something else. I knew there was something more. And boxing, selling tickets, acquiring sponsorship, and going through all of them motions proved to me that I could do more than the construction, because I left school and did construction, then doing it for 10 years, which I loved, working with my brother, my uncles, my dad, my cousins. But I thought to myself, I feel like I can do more than just this. I know that there's more that I can offer. And then when I boxed, I was selling good tickets. And as you know how important that is, I had no less than 10 sponsors. I ended up saying to other sponsors, I can't take you on. I was regularly selling 200 tickets. And that gave me the belief that you can do it, whatever that might be that you think you want to do, but you might not be sure. You can do it. You can do it.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. That's such a brilliant answer, and I can fully relate to everything you're saying. That is such a brilliant answer. I love that. I love that. We'll switch the pace a little bit. Give me one fighter that you would fight for free, just for pride. It could be a famous fighter in history. It could be someone you was on a collision course with your pro career that you didn't actually manage to get it on. Or it could be someone that, you know what, you just straight up don't like. You'd love to get him in the ring and throw a few shots.
Who would I like to fight for free? I mean, I'd like to fight Jake Paul for the money. But if you're talking about fighting someone for free, you know what? It really depends what's going on right here, right now. I don't dislike anyone enough to want to fight them for free. I'd fight anyone just for the fun of the fight, if anything. If you said fight someone for fun, I'd say, do you know what? Let me see how I'd get on with Canelo. Give me a year back in the gym and let me just see how I could get on. Maybe it
Just
wouldn't be long, maybe it would.
test the levels. Yeah,
I just want to see, yeah, I sparred, and I'm sure you did as well, some
yeah,
super high level guys. But and you only notice if you've had real competitive fights, be it amateur or pro. Sparring someone ain't the same as boxing someone, mate. You can
yeah,
spar and you think, oh, I did well against them. Trust me, mate. When someone's pinging one off your chin, you're rocked, you're stunned, people are cheering. You know, if you don't fight back, the ref's going to step in. You're
yeah.
buzzed. Do you take a knee? Do I hold on? When's the round going? What's going on? In sparring, there's not that worry. You just, you can cover up. Your coach will go, have a little look, or maybe back one of you off. But to fight someone like that, just to see what it's like, yeah,
It's a test. That's a test.
yeah.
Rich, give me a moment that made you nearly walk away from the sport, or what actually made you walk away from the sport in the end?
Mm. Well, I got injured pretty early on in my boxing as a pro. As an amateur, different. You go on a journey. I kind of got not bored with the amateurs, but when that time came, it came feeling probably the
Yeah,
same as fights feeling, if you like.
yeah,
Well, as a pro, I got damaged hands. Both my hands got pretty damaged in, I think it was my third or fourth fight. And
hmm
from that fight on, I almost didn't spar or hit bags or pads. I had to do noodles and paddles,
yeah.
skipping and shadowboxing for 3 fights, I'd say.
Wow.
Barely minimal sparring, very controlled. That that there was times where I was like, oh, what am I doing? Where am I going with this? If I'm in round 10 and my hands are gone, or I'm in round 3 and my hands are gone, and I still got 7 rounds to go, that ain't a nice place to be.
Yeah,
What do I do? And then, funny enough, they weren't that bad in my last fight. Enough, but not as bad as before. And I kind of knew. I thought,
yeah,
mate, whatever you think you're going to do in this sport, your hands ain't going to allow it. It's time.
yeah. A lot of fighters say the same thing that when they know, they just know. You just get that feeling that you know what, I think this chapter's done, time's
Yeah.
closed, and it's time to move on and do something else. Um, Rich, we hear all the sound bites from everyone, yeah, but you're a very experienced guy. You've been in some really good gyms. You've had some really good teammates as well. Um, what's the biggest lie that fighters tell during fight week?
The biggest lie. The biggest lie that fighters tell. I'm trying to think of the lies that I tell. I mean, that sounds like I'm lying to people all the time. It's not. That's not what I mean. The biggest lie. I mean, I'd say a lot of fighters will claim that they don't get scared. And
Yeah,
I think that a lie that you tell yourself until you believe it, and then you still say it, you don't think it's a lie, but it is because you've convinced yourself that you're not. And I'll tell you why I say that. And you can correct me if you disagree with me. And I'd like you to do so. Have you
go on.
ever had a fight where you're so confident you're going to beat them, it's almost too easy? Like, maybe in championships, you do amateur championships, the
Yeah,
first few fights, like local, you don't get to pick who you fight. You got someone ever had, I don't know, he's had 12 fights, he's won 4. You think, like day's work, it's going to be easy for me. And then later on in the championships, you might have someone that's had 40 and won 35, and then you're edgy because you're like, this is going to be a war.
yeah,
When you're not scared, you're not sharp. You're not sharp.
100%,
I
100%.
believe that you perform your very best when you're most scared. So I think a lot of fighters get scared. It's not scared of fighting. It's
Yeah,
not scared of getting hurt. It's scared of getting embarrassed. It's
that's
scared
it.
of not even getting knocked out. It's scared of getting so outclassed you can't land the glove and they're beating you up and just embarrassing you. That I
That
think is a lie. The fighters say, "I'm not scared." Yeah, you are.
for me personally, anyone that says they're not, any fighter that says they're not scared, they're not nervous, they're either lying or they're a psychopath. Every time I've got to the ring, I've been nervous and I've been afraid. And like you just said, it's not about getting knocked out. It's not about getting beat up. It was the fear of being embarrassed and not being able to land a shot and just looking like you don't deserve to be in there. So 100%
Yeah.
agree. A lot of my lies normally centered around my weight. Aaron, how's your weight getting on? And I'll be like, yeah, my weight's cool.
You know what?
I'm
You're
only
right. You're right. You're right. That's a
I'm only
lie.
2 pound
Everyone,
over. Rich, have you ever taken a fight that you wasn't ready for? If so, why did you take it? And then what happened in the fight?
don't. I wouldn't say I've knowingly taken a fight that I didn't feel ready for.
Yeah.
I would say the first year I went in amateur championships,
Mm-hmm.
I went in, there's under 10s, under 20s, and there's open class. The first one I went in was the under 20s.
Yeah.
But I'd had 11 fights, bang on, so I'd had too many to go in the under 10s. The first opponent I got had bang on 20. So I'd had 11, just enough to qualify. He'd had the maximum amount. He'd had 20. I think he'd won 18, and he had a good few stoppages in there. Now, to contradict my previous thing, I didn't really care about who I was boxing. I wasn't scared of who I was boxing. It was an embarrassment. So I'd always be like, who my boxing coach? At the time, there was Warrior. You could look on Warrior and be like, give me that guy, give me that guy, give me that guy. I'll fight him. Anyone's a record. Like, anyone that's had more than 10 fights, I was like, give me him. Let's have it.
Yeah.
But there's one guy, my coach was like, I'm not going to tell you his record until you're in the fight. And I remember it was like round 3, sat in the corner. Bear in mind, I actually had 7 fights as a junior, come back as a senior about 5 years later or whatever it was, had 4 fights, and then boxed this guy that had 20. So I basically had 4 fights at this point, and he'd had 20. And then my coach in the corner was like, he's won 18 of his 20 fights. But at this point, I was 3 rounds up, and there was only 1 round to go. So I think he kind of knew all I've got to do is just not get knocked out in the next round.
Yeah.
That had I known before, I probably would have said, he's had 20 and 118 for an amateur record. That is pretty crazy.
Very, very good. Very good. Very good. Rich, you've been in gyms all over the country, sparred with some top boys. What's the hardest you've ever been hit? There must be one time that sticks in your mind.
Tell you what stands out, actually. It might not even been the hardest I've ever been hit, but the most impactful. I did rounds with Josh Taylor, right? And bear in mind, I was a middleweight, and he was, a lightweight, couple of weight divisions below me. So I've gone down there, done a bit of sparring. In the first half of the round, I thought, it's all right. I'm touching him, I'm landing some shots. Thought this is all right. He didn't really throw a lot of shots. And then probably about a minute to the end of the round, boom, hit me with a hook. Perforated my eardrum. First shot he threw, boom. And I thought, damn, he's from one shot. That was damage. And I got 8 rounds. I got 7 rounds to go. And I thought, all right, just relax, stay calm. Boom, the other side, done the other one. I was like, he hit me with 2 shots in that round. Both of them done crazy damage. And that was kind of, it didn't rock me in any way. Like, I weren't stunned. I've been rocked loads of times. You know, when you're like black out on your feet and then you come back around and you're like, I'm in a fight.
What happened?
It weren't like that. It just went boom, buzzing in the one ear, lost the sound, then boom, luckily balanced me back out again, done the other one. That's the most impactful I've been.
Okay. That's a good story. I've done a few rounds with Josh myself, and I can attest for very spiteful puncher. Very spiteful.
Well, it's accurate. That's the problem, isn't it?
Very accurate, very fast, and very spiteful. Very good fighter.
Gives you a little full sense of security. You start getting a bit comfortable, and then he's like, "Okay, cool, here you go."
You get hit with certain. When you get hit with certain shots, and you're like, "Yep, right. This is the levels. Yep, this is the level. Yeah. This is where I need to be at." Rich, this could be amateur or pro. I know you spent a long time with Alec Wilkie. There must be one corner instruction that will never leave your mind. It can be good. It could be bad. It could just be straight up funny. There must be one time that you will always remember.
I have a couple of good ones, actually. Any bad ones? Had some dodgy corners over my time. Some dodgy cornering is probably not the right way, but I've had some really good ones. And I tell you who stands out in my mind as a good coach, And he might not even remember cornering me. When I had my first senior bout after the break I said about, I come back and I did Essex versus Cyprus.
Yeah.
And I was a lot better of a senior than I was a junior, but I was very erratic. I was all excitable and, couldn't wait to get in there, couldn't wait to do what I was doing. I had an excitable first round and I punched him all around the ring and I was really excited about what was going on. I thought, I'm going to get a stoppage, it's going to be great. And he sat me down in the corner and he said nothing. He just was like, breathe. And he didn't say anything. He said, just breathe. Just breathe. Give me about 20 seconds to breathe. Then gave me a bit of water and then gave me a basic instruction. Now, that's Chris Oko. And I think he was at Chadwell St. Mary.
Yeah,
that
cornering
stance, he's probably still there. I think his boy's doing really well at the moment.
Very well, very well.
Method of coaching, that method of cornering has stuck with me ever since. And he cornered me for one round of one fight. And that, for whatever reason, just stuck with me.
Chris Oko is a brilliant coach. He's a stalwart of amateur boxing. Doesn't tend to get his flowers or the plaudits that he quite rightly deserves. He's been involved with a lot of good fighters over the years. And I'm glad you give someone like him his flowers.
I never had the privilege of training with him. I had great coaches as an amateur and we had a lot of fun. But my philosophy was always, and bear in mind, I won a hell of a lot more than I lost. I did quite well as an amateur, but I was always fun first. If you're having fun, you'll do well. If you're just putting too much on a pedestal, and we had great fun. But that stood out for me as a big moment, and he deserves it because he had 1 minute. He invested 1 minute into my career, and it sticks with me now.
He made such a big impact. Piggybacking off that point, for you, what separates a good coach from a bad coach?
Ego. Now, I think a lot of coaches, not all coaches, there's one way to do things. As I disagree. Again, there are a big bunch of coaches that are free with their coaching and a lot of them that are one way only, and that's the only way it can be done. I believe freedom coaching is a better way to do it, and you'll see more success via the natural flair of a fighter and then shaping that natural flair as opposed to saying it has to be done one way.
Yeah, I fully agree.
So is ego the right word for that? I don't know if it's the right word, but
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with what you're saying because my coaching philosophy is you have to work with what you've got and you try and improve and you try and improve their strengths and exacerbate their strengths and maybe try and, if you can't eradicate the weaknesses, then you try and hide their weaknesses. You build a lot of people
I'll give you an example of something. When someone throws a punch, you've got point A to point B. Some people will drop that hand and then throw it to point. So they go point A, B, C.
Yeah.
Now this irritates me when I get new fighters and they do that. I say that is really fast, and I know what you're doing. You're picking up momentum to get the shot. So if an experienced fighter is going to see that, they're not even going to need to do much other than that. Just that. That's enough.
That's it.
Now, I would like to get rid of that habit. However, if it's so ingrained in you that you can't stop doing it, I will ask them to feint more and twitch more to confuse the opponent that A, B is a feint and not a punch. Because otherwise, every time you punch, I'm going to see that. I'm going to A, B, C. Or they go A, B, and then drop, and then back to A.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, they drop it to flick it, which I get with the momentum you're trying to get. Yeah. You're also saying, Aaron, I'm going to hit you now. Aaron, I'm going to hit you now.
That's it. I tell the same thing. I tell the same thing to the basic the beginner fighters that I train. The moment you do that tell, I'm either going to do two things. I'm either going to hit you first, or I'm going to move out of the way. So let's try and eradicate that. I feel like on the back of what you're saying, a lot of coaches maybe try and mold fighters in their image. And this is how I was. This is how I box. So this is how I want you to box. And I don't feel that you can do that. I feel you need to work with what you've got, and help people. What's the word? How to articulate it? Help people just become who they can be. Basically, become who they can be. Everyone's got their own style. Everyone's got their own flair of doing things, and it's all about trying to help people. Bring them to a place where they can express themselves.
One way to box is there. When you look at Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali. Okay, which one of them is doing it wrong then? Aaron, tell me which one of them was doing it wrong. because they're
Yeah.
both doing it right. They're just doing it different. So
Yeah.
there are some hard and fast rules which I'll say you're really going to want to do this. With a lot of other stuff, I always say, okay, this is a shot that I wasn't a fan of. It's worth knowing, but to use it, you need to understand the risk and reward. So
Yeah.
if you're going to take that risk of throwing that shot, you've got to understand the risks that you're putting out there for that shot. Happy for you to throw it. Some fighters you see step in, don't set anything up and throw massive right hands over the top out of nowhere. And I would say to a fighter, I'd probably want to feint a little bit, get a reaction out of them, to stun them for a second with my feet, hypnotize them, and then throw it. But other fighters throw it, no setup, boom, clean people out. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it didn't work for me, but it may well work for you.
100%. Listen, Rich, I'm gonna have to get you down to some of my outreach stuff that I'm doing because your philosophy is bang on lining up with my philosophy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
a lot of the people that I train, I frustrate them so much, and I don't mean to do it because they ask me a question: Can I do this or can I do that or what about if I do this? And my answer 9 times out of 10 is the same. Well, yeah, but it depends. It's always going to depend. It's always going to be scenario dependent and person dependent. You can't say there's no boxing is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. There's only X amount of punches and there's only X amount of defenses against them punches. But how you
Mm.
put that spin on it, it's endless. It's endless. But
Do you know what?
your
Even
philosophy,
I spend a lot of time with the guys, not to go too drill into a specific. As you say, there's very limited amount of shots,
yeah,
but there's an unlimited amount of ways you can throw them.
yeah,
Now, if I throw a jab at you, full power, 100% speed, over and over and over again, you will become accustomed to the speed and accustomed to the power. If they keep hitting you, eventually you'll get accustomed to it. And eventually your reactions will go to the speed. Every
yeah,
now and then, throw a shot half the speed, and you'll be surprised how many people go, whoop, and then you'll just go, whoop, and you'll
yeah,
catch them because of the
yeah,
tempo. Or even though let's say there's, I don't know, 6 shots, straight, hook, uppercut. Obviously, there's variations, both sides.
yeah.
Change the tempo, change the power, change the angle.
That's
All
it.
these variations, you can make one shot 400 shots if you want.
That's it, man. That is it. Um, Rich, you're you're a very experienced guy. From your years in the sport, what's one mistake fighters make outside of the ring?
Oh, there's, and I'm thinking of my personal things. There's lots I made as an amateur more nutritionally,
Yep,
but then if you're thinking of transitioning to the pro, it's not paying attention to the business side.
yep,
Now, this is the example I always give, and I can't be mean or sound spiteful when I say it, and I'm not being mean to anyone when I say it. If there's a promoter and he's got one spot left on his show, and you are 10-0, Aaron, with 10 knockouts, you look great, but you're
yep,
selling 50 tickets.
yeah,
I've
of
had
course.
10 fights, I've won 5, I've lost 4, had 1 draw, but I'm selling 400 tickets. 7 days a week, twice on Sundays, you ain't getting on that show, and I am. And I tell
100%.
people this over and over again. It may not be important to you now. You may think you've got a manager, you may have a promoter. They do not sell tickets, they do not get you sponsors. That is your responsibility. And let me tell you one thing, boxing will not last forever. It will not last forever. And maybe 1% make a lifetime of living out of it.
Yep,
I was blessed enough that the 3 years I was an active pro, I had enough sponsors to pay for all of my wages, and I had sponsors and ticket sales that were helping me get by. But then after boxing, what's more important is I didn't have to go back on the building site because of what I'd done when I was boxing. The biggest mistake I see fighters doing is thinking, I'm a good fighter, it'll be great. I'm sorry, mate, I'm really sorry, but
yeah,
that's not even 50% of it. It's probably more like 40% of it.
yeah. You're preaching, and that's why lately I've been coming online and I've been putting myself more out there because I feel like a lot of these young pros, or not even young pros, new professionals, they need to hear this because not a lot of people talk about this. A lot of people will be online, they're a pro, so they're living the dream somewhat, and they will be portraying it a certain way. And we've both been in the game, we've both been in the trenches. We know everything that glitters is not gold, and it can look one way, and the reality of it can be a completely different way. And people need to hear this kind of thing, and they need to build platforms for themselves and build leverage. Ultimately, your manager, your promoter, without becoming too political and going on a tirade, a lot of the time you're paying for nothing. You know, everything is on you. Promoting the fight, tickets, you know, ferrying around. There was times on fight week, you know, I'm fighting in 2 days' time. I don't want to be driving an hour each way to drop off 5 tickets, but you need to do it because you need to hit your quota. Otherwise, your fight's getting pulled from that card, you know. And then
or you're paying to be there.
yeah, never in a million years. And any young pro, any brand new professional that's turned over, never in a do not pay to fight. Never in a million years. Do not. If you can't sell enough tickets, you don't fight. That's it. Simple as. Do not put
Except
any of
you're
your
not
money.
there ready yet, and move on. Yeah, except
Yeah,
you're not ready for that part yet, and move on.
do not ever put any money out of your own pocket into tickets to fight. That is 100%. Don't ever do it. Boxing is dangerous enough as it is. You shouldn't be paying to fight. Trust me. It's that is a real. You've got me fired up. That's a real bugbear of mine
This
because
is
I
the
know
subject
pros
that
that have
fires
done it.
me up. This is the subject that fires me up because I might have even been better at tickets and sponsors than I ever was boxing. Because I don't go back on a building site now because of that. I got an opportunity to do something different, and I loved working on the site. I really did, but I just wanted to do something different. I always say to the fighters, and a lot of guys complain that they can't, because I do. If I use the word help fighters, sometimes I've helped fight consultancy, if you like, to help fighters.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. If I tell you this is how you lose weight, you can't eat calorie deficit for one day and expect to get your dream body. What instruction you're giving, you need to consistently until you achieve the goal. Now, one of the tips that I give people, how do I get sponsors? I don't know who to approach, etc., etc. Look at all the other fighters. Look at all the other fighters and look at and list all of the sponsors on all the other fighters, and then circle all the common denominator industries, all the industries that come up over and over again. So, that whatever that industry is there,
they're interested.
I've seen of the 50 fighters I've looked at that are all sponsored, 35 of them have this exact industry on them.
Yeah.
Then you're onto something.
Yeah.
And then you can list all of the businesses within that industry in your area, and there you go. You've got a starting point. But I'll say this to fighters, and they'll go, yeah. They'll do it, and they'll come back to me a week later and say, so I read an email and sent it to 100 businesses. I'm like, let me stop you right there. I'll read that email as a business and go, can I have £1,000 a month? No, move on my life.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough for it not to land in my spam.
That's it.
Mate,
100%.
if you have to, put your boots and shorts and boxing gloves on and walk into a business. You'll catch their attention then, my friend.
That is it, man. That is it. That is brilliant advice. And people, you have to put yourself out there. New fighters, new pros, young fighters, you have to put yourself out there. You have to be active in your community. You have to engage with people. Even something simple as go and train in your local park. Go sign up to your local park run and go run with people every Saturday morning. You'll be surprised how many people. I used to go to park run every week. You'd be surprised how many people you'd meet, and you get into a chat, you know, and you meet people from there. Rich, before we start wrapping it up, I'm going to ask you the last question. Yeah, would you want your kids to box? If yes, then why? If no, then why not?
I want my son to know how to box because don't quote me on statistics. In fact, someone do. Why not? Put it in the comments. Quote me on statistics here. Most male fights in the UK, I'm going to say here, are going to happen in a group environment, maybe a pub, a club, a festival, multiple attackers maybe. As a male, probably the best survival mechanism you've got is to smash someone's chin and get out of there. And if you can't defend yourself, I feel like you could potentially be putting yourself in a vulnerable position no matter where you are. If every single person in any given room could do what they want to you at any given moment, there's nothing you can do about it, that's vulnerability. And I don't want my kids to be that vulnerable. So I want my son to know how to box for safety. If he wants to compete, that's on him. If he doesn't, that's absolutely fine. For my daughter, and again, controversial here, you might get some stick for this. I don't think boxing will help my daughter in a self-defense scenario. With all the will in the world, a 55 kilo, 60 kilo female trained fire punches me in the face is less likely to do enough damage to stop me if I'm a raging grizzly bear trying to grab hold of her. However, a female that knows grappling, she throws you on the floor, it's game over. If she jumps on top of you and chokes you out, it is game over. It is just my opinion. I think if a male punches you, it don't matter how big you are, that could be it. Not to say that a female couldn't knock you out. What I'm saying is my daughter will need help if she's ever caught in a one-to-one scenario. My son is more likely to need help if he's in a group scenario.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Brilliant answer.
Rightly or wrongly?
Rich, I've really enjoyed having you on. Really appreciate catching up. Let's not leave it too long. Stay in touch, brother.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.